Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. President George H.W. Bush is in the media today because he recently passed away as of 24 hours ago at the age of 94, and he is being glamorized, glorified, and memorialized by many in the media for different things he did in his life, one of which was signing the Americans with Disabilities Act into law. Now, there is a lot of deception going on about this law and its effect on the disabled community, and we definitely need to set the record straight here. So what was the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as the ADA? It was signed by President George Herbert Walker Bush back in 1992 to expand employment opportunities for citizens with disabilities by prohibiting discrimination against them by businesses. Tragically, the opposite of the intended result occurred. What was the intended result? To expand employment opportunities for the disabled. In fact, what took place was a reduction in the employment opportunities for those same people. All you have to do is a little research to find this out. The unintended consequences of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This was a document that was produced by Thomas DeLear and was published by was found on the Cato Institute's website, which is an organization that looks at and studies economic issues to help the public understand really why free markets are much more superior than managed markets by government. Now, who is Thomas DeLear? Is he just some guy who's on the internet typing things up for people to believe whether they're true or not? No, this is a legitimate economist, a professor at Georgetown University. He's worked at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Congressional Budget Office and at the Council of Economic Advisors as an economist for several years. He has a BA, Bachelor's of Arts in Economics from Princeton University, and earned a PhD in Economics from Stanford University. So this is someone who has spent many years studying different economic issues and publishing his research so that people like you and me can understand the world much in a way that allows us to understand the issues better. His document, which contains a lot of very rich information about the effect of the ADA, is very good at putting this into language that the rest of us can understand. The effect of the ADA on employment with men with disabilities. You have this column here which shows what happened to the employment level of men with disabilities before the enactment of the ADA from 1985 to 1990. 59.8% of men with disabilities were employed. After the ADA, from 1991 to 1995, that rate dropped to 48.9%, which is a drop in the employment rate of more than 10 percentage points for men with disabilities. What is sad about this is that those who were affected the most in a negative way by the ADA are those who are least fortunate in terms of their value as an employee, those who have the least amount of education, those who have mental disabilities, and those who are younger are much more likely to see their employment rate drop as a result of the ADA. And you can see from the data. You have this column which shows high school dropouts, this column here which shows high school graduates, and this column here which shows those with some level of college education or college graduates. The numbers are larger in the high school dropout column, showing a greater decrease in the employment rate for men with disabilities versus those who have high school education saw only a single-digit percentage drop in their employment rate, as well as those with college education. But those without a high school diploma saw double-digit drops, double-digit percentage point drops in their education, in their employment after the ADA was signed. Those with mental disabilities in this column here saw 20 percentage point or more drops in their employment rate. versus those with other disabilities like physical disabilities or unlisted disabilities that saw percentage point drops of 12 or less compared to 20-point drops for those with mental disabilities after the ADA was signed. And those who were younger fared the worst. Those who were born in the 1960s had greater percentage point drops in their employment versus those who were born in the 1930s, if you just look at these numbers. What we can gather from this information so far is that the ADA caused a decrease of about 8 percentage points in the employment rate of men with disabilities, and that the ADA caused lower employment regardless of age, educational level, and type of disability. But the worst thing is that most were affected. Those who were most affected by the ADA were young, less educated, and mentally disabled men. It shows that the ADA is a striking example of the law of unintended consequences. When George H.W. Bush signed the ADA into law, he was intending to improve the economic situation of those who were disabled. But he worsened it. He made it more difficult for the disabled to get hired. And the reason for that was because, very well explained in this paragraph, although employers can be and are sued for discriminatory hiring, most litigation under the ADA arises when employees are fired. The two most common violations of the ADA alleged in charges filed with the EEOC, that is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that's the government agency that sues on behalf of those claiming unjust discrimination in the workplace. The charges filed with the EEOC have involved, first, discharge, layoff, or suspension, and second, failure to provide reasonable accommodation. Thus, firms may have responded to the prospect of litigation by reducing the hiring of the disabled. And that is exactly what happened. The hiring rate of the disabled went down because when you say that you cannot discriminate against somebody by maybe firing them or by disciplining them or by suspending or laying them off, the business is discouraged from hiring that person because they may need to lay them off or suspend or fire them. And if they know a lawsuit will come at them for doing that, and lawsuits are very expensive and costly, the business then starts looking at the chances of that happening and tries to mitigate loss by reducing the number of people they hire who are disabled. Lawsuits are incredibly expensive. In fact, they can bankrupt a business. Even if they win their case, the cost of fighting the lawsuit in court can bankrupt a business within a few years' time. So businesses do not want to face lawsuits, and not just from firing, but from the idea of not providing sufficient accommodation or reasonable accommodation. This means changing the doorknob so that someone can open a door whose hand might not be able to grip a traditional doorknob, or providing wheelchair ramps, or putting people in jobs who are disabled who don't have to bend over and deal with the strain on the back. These accommodations are very expensive. Businesses may be in markets where they cannot afford to take on the cost because they are trying to make a profit. They're trying to survive a very vicious, brutal marketplace, and having to make accommodations for the disabled or risk a lawsuit by firing or disciplining or suspending someone who's disabled who's been fired. This is very hard for a business to want to take on, so they do whatever they can to avoid these costs. And we see it in the numbers that they have reduced their rate of bringing disabled people into the workforce, because business is all about making a profit, and you avoid unnecessary costs as much as you can. What we should be doing is calling for and moving toward repealing the ADA, getting rid of this law that has hurt the disabled. H.W. Bush may have intended it for good, but it has not worked for good. It has worked against the very people he was hoping to improve the lives of. The ADA should be abolished, and the legacy has already proven itself out to be one of a very negative outcome. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please follow us on Twitter at Libertarian Black Man. Purchase the book, Say No to Big Government, My Case for Maximum Freedom, on Amazon for $18. Share and like this video, and we hope to see you in the next one.